accountable to anyone. They just keep raking in the money every single year or putting people in prison. It's time it gets defunded, JJ. I think they would rather Britain suffer, sacrifice our borders and sacrifice their people than upset the liberal global stage. For them, the idea of removing the UK from the international outdated treaties is far more horrific than the odd sacrificial woman or man that's attacked on the streets. I think this is where their mind is at.
It's Monday and welcome to the Daily Expresso. I'm JJ Anisiobi and today I'm joined by Belinda DeLucy to kickstart the week. Belinda, did you know today is our 50th episode?
Well, huge congratulations.
Thank
50
you very
episodes
much.
of truth, common sense and good bands.
Yes, and it's a milestone. You were here for the first, you're here for the 50th.
That's
Hopefully
right.
you'll be here for the 100th.
Yay! Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well, let's start with yesterday's big news. BBC Director General Tim Davie and BBC News CEO Deborah Turness resigned from the broadcaster after an internal report into a Panorama documentary was leaked to the press. The Panorama programme featured a misleading edit of US President Donald Trump, edited together to appear as though he encouraged the 2021 Capitol Hill riot, which he did not. The documentary edited 2 lines from the speech, so it appeared that Trump had said, "We're going to walk down to the Capitol and I'll be there with you and we will fight and we will fight like hell." No. It was omitted from the episode, the section of the speech where Trump actually said, "I'll be there with you to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard." The phrase, "and we fight like hell," was actually said by Trump an hour later into his speech. So quite clearly, the BBC, Panorama, they're trying to fob it off now and say it was an external company, it wasn't us who made it. It was something, okay, but it still got aired on the BBC and it was still fabricated. You still made the leader of the free world look like he's trying to incite violence. Tim Davie and Miss Turness, they had to go, right?
Oh my gosh, minimum they had to go. Tim Davie has overseen the death spiral of the BBC.
Mm-hmm.
He has not taken any action since he's been there on any of the awful stories coming out about BBC bias, whether it's on Gaza and the senior of Hamas official's son being the narrator for one of the BBC documentaries.
Yep.
No one's head rolled for that.
Mm-hmm.
No one's head rolled for Bob Villain when he was performing on the stage in Glastonbury calling for the death of Israeli soldiers. No, the BBC didn't even edit that out. They
Yeah.
let it play along. No heads roll at all. No one is accountable at the BBC. And they extract money from the British taxpayer on threat of imprisonment.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Davie has overseen this liberal, progressive, toxic wokeism, that the same that has infiltrated and poisoned our institutions of education, our museums, our national history, national trust, everything from the NHS, it's all been poisoned by this kind of aggressive, liberal, progressive view of the world, which actually, let's be honest, only probably about 10% of the country sign up to. But that is at the core now of the BBC. They've stopped being a broadcaster. They're now a conveyor belt for propaganda on ideologies, deeply contested ideologies like trans extremism, not just to an adult audience, but they infiltrated CBBC. Now, as a mum of 4 children, growing up at that vulnerable age, kids were exposed to, children, you might be born in the wrong body stuff on the BBC. How could they do that? This is not fair reporting. It has become a mouthpiece for Hamas propaganda, reiterating it as fact. I mean, there has been so many problems with the BBC. Climate alarmism. Tim Davie has done absolutely nothing. No action taken whatsoever. And do you know what really worries me is only because it's Trump, I think, has this made the news, the most powerful man. Imagine the kind of arrogance and sense of impunity that must be at the BBC, that they can do this kind of thing and get away with it, actually lie, produce fake news and get away with it. They knew 6 months ago that this had happened. This lie was peddled and they did nothing. And they produced the programme a week before the election in America. That's electoral meddling.
Yeah.
This is huge. This is almost criminal. And what I worry about is who else have they got? What had they planned for Nigel? Now, imagine being from Reform. We know Brexit derangement syndrome hit to the BBC massively. And had they got it, planned that some kind of fixing and editing of major senior Reform members or Nigel would help manipulate the audience into thinking we were fascist? There needs to be root and branch purge of the BBC if it's to survive, not just Tim Davie, root and branch you need to sign. You should sign a Hippocratic oath, I think, before you work at the BBC now. Sign up to saying you'll be impartial or you don't get the job. And if you refuse to be impartial on the job, you get sacked, but no one's ever sacked. It's like the BBC they're not accountable to anyone. They just keep raking in the money every single year or putting people in prison. It's time it gets defunded, JJ.
You sound like Liz Truss, the deep state, infiltration.
No, it's true. This conspiracy theory, the BBC loves to label everyone with misinformation and conspiracy theorists. I'm sorry, I'm siding with the conspiracy theorists at the moment. What they did to Trump, and what was really sad about Trump's response, I know he called it purposeful dishonesty, and his press secretary said it was 100% fake news.
These are very dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election. What a terrible thing for democracy.
Yeah, but you know what really hurt? The end bit of his statement where he said, and this was from an ally of ours. This was from someone many consider in America to be our number one ally. The BBC has not only shamed that wonderful national treasure we used to have, but it's shamed our country. I miss the national anthem at midnight when the BBC used to play it in the 80s and 90s. When it struck midnight, they'd play this beautiful national anthem and they just presented the news. Their purpose has completely shifted into some indoctrination camp. And it either goes or a complete regime change.
Listen, I don't feel sorry for the BBC. I've written in today's column, you can still get it if you go to Shops right now. It'll be online tomorrow. I've said that I've always disliked the BBC because I think that they don't have people who represent what I think. They don't have working class people at the very top. It's all people from, I don't know, the Islington media elite. They all think the same. They're all Oxford, Cambridge boys. They're all Tory members. And that is not reflective of the country at all. But I've got to say, your mate Nigel Farage, he is on there a lot. For a company that is so biased, he's been on Question Time more than anyone else. For a man who only has 5 MPs in his party, he gets to speak a lot on the BBC.
That's because he's the only opposition. You can have a Tory, you can have a Labour, you can have a Lib Dem. They all think the same. They're all pro-mass immigration, pro-net zero lunacy, pro high taxes. There was never any opposition unless you had Nigel there. So I understand why he's there. But for Tim Davie, do you know how much he's on a year from taxpayers' money? £540,000 a year of taxpayers' money pays for this man to oversee the destruction of something that was so precious to us. They've stolen it from us. The BBC belonged to the British. And it's hardly promoting Britain anymore. The kind of stories it churns out are so anti-British. The countryside is racist. The countryside is colonial. It is, why is it 97%, white people in sort of disgust at the state of the country? They promote multiculturalism and diversity over anything else. It's their dogma. And I think they have become an anti-British broadcasting corporation. Even Horrible Histories, obviously, I've got young ones. If anyone's got young ones watching, Horrible Histories during the Brexit time produced this anti-Brexit song that made out all of Britain's contributions to the world were not Britain-owned. They were all foreign. They did a Gary Lineker, fish and chips isn't British, it's Turkish, whatever. Constantly demeaning and belittling the British contributions. They did it with the Industrial Revolution. They do it on slavery. They never mention the unique contribution Britain made to ending slavery. They only ever talk about the horrors. And I do think it's time they go back to their roots or go.
Well, Deborah Turness said just this morning when she was on her way into the office that the BBC is not institutionally biased, which reminds me of when the Met Police were saying we're not institutionally racist, we're not institutionally misogynistic. Oh, there's just a couple bad apples. There, as you said, there's a clear problem with the culture at the BBC, and it needs to be changed if they're going to be able to be saved.
Yeah, I think it's at every single level, and I haven't watched the BBC for years. It's not something that I trusted.
The Queen's speech?
No, I haven't actually.
And you call yourself a patriot.
No, it's because I'm always a little bit sort of half a leg under the table after Christmas lunch, and I don't manage to get to the telly.
Fair.
But I think the problem for me with the BBC is that it is so defensive. It denies it ever does anything wrong. Some of the responses of BBC employees, the Trump editing was a mistake. No, it wasn't. No. You sat round an editorial table and you thought, how can we manipulate voters to vote against Trump? Let's make him out to be a monster. My question is, who else have they done this to?
Yeah.
Who don't, anyone who disagrees with their extreme liberal progressive view of the world is deemed some kind of, demon by the BBC. They do it with look at the BLM process, the way the BBC announced it was largely peaceful, the BLM protest, while 27 police officers were injured, one with a broken collarbone and a punctured lung. Do you think they'd say the same about a Tommy Robinson march if 27 police officers had been injured? They would not be calling it a largely peaceful protest, that's for sure.
Yeah,
it is
perhaps.
biased.
Well, let us know what you think in the comments. What's wrong with the BBC? Can it be saved? Next. It's been reported that the Labour government are planning on offering asylum seekers £100 a week to move out of migrant hotels. This is as they try to combat the spiralling costs for housing. Now, the scheme aims to get migrants to live with someone that they know, so they have an alternative to living in a migrant hotel. In addition to the £100 payment, they continue to receive the £49.18 a week that they currently get. And just to put the figures into perspective, the government is currently spending £5.5 million a day on paying for these migrant hotels. Belinda, this is a weird one because we are spending £5.5 million a day on hotels. So to pay people £100 to live with relatives or friends, whatever else, that is going to bring the cost down. But should we be paying full stop, I suppose?
I wouldn't put it past the government. I mean, they paid the Ethiopian's asylum seeker, who was a convicted sex criminal from the Epping migrant hotel, paid him £300 to get on a plane instead of saying you're deported, mate, on your bike. Here's £300, which is an average Ethiopian yearly salary. It's a huge amount of money. They are rewarding men who break into our country from a safe country. And I think many people are beginning to feel not only is this government theft now, because there's no representation of this. There's no democratic means for the British people to stop this anymore.
There is. We wait for the general election.
Yeah, I mean, only because Reform's standing. Before Reform were around, you had no way of stopping this because every party just opened the borders. The £100 reward on top of the £50 a week, I think is an absolute scandal. Even I know Labour are denying that it's a formal plan, but the fact that it was in the works, this is their solution. Just keep giving them money. People don't want these asylum seekers here from France. They don't want them. Labour's answer is just to shuffle them around the country, let them roam the streets wherever they are. No, no, no. We just had reports from Dorset that 44% of the sex offenders facing court in Dorset are asylum seekers. 44%. There is an increased risk of rape and crime by men from certain countries, Afghanistan especially, 3 times more likely to be convicted of a sexual crime than a British-born man. The government, this is no accident, by the way. The asylum process is absolutely designed to allow as many people in as possible.
For what purpose? For what gain?
Okay, black market in the UK is worth £200 billion a year.
Okay.
Number 2, I think they would rather Britain suffer, sacrifice our borders and sacrifice their people than upset the liberal global stage. For them, the idea of removing the UK from the international outdated treaties is far more horrific than the odd sacrificial woman or man that's attacked on the streets. I think this is where their mind is at. They no longer work for national applause, JJ. They work for global liberal applause. And so they will not do anything to stop the boats because there's no political will for it. But
surely, with Starmer now, surely he knows if he doesn't stop the boats and if he doesn't close the borders, it's likely Reform are going to be the next government.
I don't think they think like that at all. I think Keir Starmer's plan is probably to try and unite the Greens, Lib Dem, Labour in a sort of stop the fascist form.
Polanski has said he will never team up with Starmer, and I think that's great of Polanski. He's standing on his morals. He said he will not link up with Starmer.
But look how it benefits Labour. The vast majority of migrants vote for Labour, 70%, I think it is. And so they win on that level. I think there is a dislike for Englishness in England from the Labour Party. I think they believe that multiculturalism and diversity is the holy grail that they're all working towards. And they need worker bees. So they see every single migrant male who's young, fit, relatively wealthy, who's broken into this country as a worker bee that will essentially end up getting leave to remain and become part of the number system in this country for big corps.
I don't know.
There's many reasons why they do it. But I tell you something, it's deliberate, JJ, because they could stop the boats if they wanted to. Denmark, Germany, all these European countries are now taking a very aggressive stance against illegal migrants, showing that even if you're in the ECHR, actually you can stop them. But because of our case law, how we've interpreted the ECHR,
Well, that's it.
It's a disaster for
so we
this
need
country.
to have our law changed, because in Denmark, as I've told you many times, my grandmother's Danish. So they, if someone applies for asylum, it doesn't go to the courts at all. It goes to a board or a panel first. If they say no, you're not going to get asylum, that person can appeal. It goes to a higher board. That second board says, no, you can't, you're out. They can't then go to a judge. The judges cannot get involved. Yeah. That person is then deported. We don't have that in this country.
Not only do we not have that, but those that get their asylum claim rejected don't get deported.
No.
Very, very rarely, because there are so many unsafe countries. Well, I'm sorry, if you rape our children, if you commit crime, if you stab people in the street, I don't care what country you go back to. I don't care what happens to you. You made a choice when you decided to abuse the hospitality of this country and hurt our people. Damn right you should go back and suffer the consequences. That needs to change.
Yeah.
Labour will never send back criminals to these so-called unsafe countries, whereas Germany has made a deal with the Taliban now so that they can send back the Afghan, asylum seekers.
Yeah.
Imagine opening our doors to Afghanistan, men not knowing whether they're Taliban supporters, and that awful Afghan resettlement scheme that Labour and Tories secretly pulled into Parliament, costing us billions of pounds, resettling tens of thousands, and then we find out they don't know whether they worked for the British Army or not. This is the state of affairs, JJ, and it needs to stop. We need to have someone with courage and backbone to sort it all out.
Well, yesterday was Remembrance Sunday, and the Green Party leader Zach Polanski was spotted wearing the customary red poppy, but also a white poppy. For those who don't know, white poppies were introduced in 1933 after World War I to symbolise three key things. Number one, to remember all victims of war. Number two, to question and challenge war. And number three, to commit to highlighting peace. Official poppy sellers, the Royal British Legion, has said it doesn't have a problem with people wearing a red or white poppy, but should someone in Zach's position pick a colour? Belinda.
I certainly don't want to force anyone to wear, poppies of whatever colour. If you want to wear a white poppy, wear one. But I think the times are very different from 1933. When the white poppy was brought in, it was a reaction to the mass slaughter of hundreds of thousands of young men across Europe for no particular gain. And they were reeling from the rawness of that grief. And that white poppy was, to avoid another war at all costs. And I can kind of understand that at the time. But then the Second World War happened. Now, the men of this country, they didn't have a choice. They didn't have the luxury privilege of Zach Polanski, who's nice in his little ivory tower somewhere in Quinoa Valley, going, I choose peace. They didn't have a choice. They had to pick up their weapons or die or sacrifice their country or let the Nazis in. I mean, I'd like to say to Zach Polanski, okay, so what would you do if ISIS suddenly invaded England tomorrow and they came in and they were raping the women and burning people alive and enforcing Sharia law? Would you just say, peace, man, lay down your weapon? This is big time surrender monkey business, JJ, and you know it. It is very different wearing a white poppy now than it was straight after the First World War.
Perhaps, but I've got to be fair to Zach Polanski on this. He still wore a red poppy. He wore a red one. Out of respect, he still wore a red one. If he is a man, and I think he's a man of principle, and he thinks, actually, yes, war is a reality, and our soldiers are defending our country wherever they're being told to go, but actually, peace is what I want still first. I think that's admirable. Surely we all want peace first. Now, of course, if we say to President Putin, look, dude, we just want some peace, yeah? Put the nukes down, get out of Ukraine. He's not going to say, okay, since you asked so nicely, I'm out of here. Of course he's not going to. But surely we should all be striving for peace first, rather than being war ready all the time and thinking, yeah, no, you can't ask for peace. What kind of man are you? Yeah, he's a man with morals. That's okay.
No, I don't. I don't think so at all. And I wouldn't be surprised.
Sorry, Zach, I tried.
I wouldn't be surprised if Zach Polanski and pretty much half the Labour Party did a Little Britain vomit as they have to put on that red poppy. I don't know why left wing have such issues with poppy. Remember Keir Starmer wearing that red poppy? Was it last year or the year before for his Chatham House speech? And then an hour later removing it when he was doing a video for a Muslim audience. What an insult to the Muslims, by the way. Many who have fought and died and sacrificed their lives for the Second World War, but that poppy was coming off for them. So there's some issue with the left wing and poppy. And I think that famous Orwellian, quote by Orwell, who said that basically the sort of left wing academia would rather steal from that poor box than stand up and sing the national anthem. There is something that has infected the left about. They think it's militarization. They think it's glorifying war, the red poppy. It is not. It is remembrance of sacrifice for everyone,
Absolutely.
for animals as well, because I know there's a separate poppy.
The purple poppy is for animals who died in service, yeah.
Yes.
Would you be okay with people wearing a purple poppy?
I don't care what people are free to wear whatever they like. I'm very fine with that. I don't like restricting people wearing different coloured badges as long as they don't incite violence or anything like that. But I do think there is a disrespect shown to the essential point of that red poppy, which is it is the blood of Flanders Field. Mm-hmm. It is that redness of sacrifice and the duty and service, the men, and women. And women, my grandma, fought in 2 wars. She was amazing. I've got a photo of her with a machine gun
Wow.
in the 1940s. She's fabulous. But I just think it started to become too political as well. The white poppy to me now doesn't mean peace. It means, avoid war no matter what, because we'd rather sacrifice everything we are, sacrifice our children, everything, rather than, be aggressive. I say, toughen up, Buttercup Generation X.
So I can't see you wearing a white poppy anytime soon.
Never wear a white poppy at all. I was at the Remembrance Service yesterday, incredibly moving with the last post, seeing the Chelsea pensioners there, 80, 90, 100 years old, feeling so much for them and my grandparents who must be turning in their grave at the state of this country. And I think they'd be very sad to see an increase in white poppy wearing, because it's all well and good saying peace, but sometimes you can only have peace through war. And they know that. They know that. It's just this self-righteous moral narcissism. I believe in peace. Well, lucky you. You have the luxury of not having to fight for it.
I think it's a nice thing that they believe in peace. Bring a bit of hope.
War makes peace, though, in so many ways.
War, yeah. Hard times make good men.
Yeah, calm waters make bad sailors. And that's what's happened to our politics at the moment.
Well, Zach, I tried, mate. I tried to stick up for you, but I think I've lost that one. The Andrew updates just keep on coming. It's been revealed that King Charles once turned down a bizarre request from his little brother, Naughty Andy. War biographer Robert Jobson claims that the King's brother once asked him for a whopping 32 grand for spiritual Indian gurus to treat him while staying at his residence. The author alleged that the King was horrified by the proposal, despite the request being passed through by the late Queen Elizabeth. The former prince has been under so much controversy. It's almost as if the shock value is completely worn off. I'm not surprised to hear this. For him, 32 grand it's nothing. That's nothing. For me, 32 grand is my entire rent, basically, for the year.
Yeah, a year's salary. I mean, that's the average salary for a Brit, around 32.
And he wants to spend it on spiritual Indian gurus.
I mean,
what's wrong with this man?
He certainly needs more than an Indian spiritual guru to cleanse his soul. I'm telling you that. But I have heard weird stories about very wealthy people hiring these gurus because they've spent money on everything else. They have not just spiritual Indian guides, but they have like angel guides who talk to the angels sat upon your shoulder and ask them their previous lives, and it's total and utter indulgence. And also, Andrew, you're supposed to be a Christian man. You go to church. That is where you should be getting your spiritual nourishment from.
Very good point.
I'm not sure I would trust anyone asking for £32,000 to do a bit of guru-ness about anything. I'd like to know what he felt he needed it for. I think there should be a long list of confessions. But I don't think this is the last of leaks about Andrew now. I think more and more will come out. And I do admire King Charles, whether, people are fans of him or not. I do admire how he's just taken, really firm stance against his brother. Yeah.
So we've got an exclusive coming out this week. I spoke to Andrew Loney, who is another royal historian, unofficial biographer of Naughty Andy. He told me that Queen Elizabeth was told many times about some of the horrible things that Andrew had done, and she always protected him, including paying for this guru. She was paying for this guru beforehand. Charles came in after she passed, and Charles said, that ain't happening no more. But Just stay tuned this week. It's going to be explosive. It's going to be huge.
Oh, my unicorn queen. I can't bear a blemish being added to her skin. I think she had a soft spot, a little weakness.
As you would do for your child.
For Andrew, yeah. I think when he fought in the Falklands, I think that was one of her proudest moments. And as a parent, you sometimes are blinded to the sins of your child. I just, it is sad, but I look forward to that expose. As long as you don't diss the Queen too.
I won't diss the Queen, but it's good. Keep an eye on that.
Juicy.
Now on to something more serious. An investigation made by our very own journalist, Zach Garner-Perkis, has identified 24 cases of grooming gangs, including one linked to notorious serial killer Levi Belfield. Survivor of Levi Belfield's grooming gang, Kristalla, has criticised Sadiq Khan for failing to act, questioning how allegations involving a notorious criminal have been forgotten. However, despite journalists and survivors lifting the lid on grooming gangs, the Met Police will only be able to review 9,000 of those cases, which is estimated to take 15 years. Belinda, we cannot wait 15 years for this investigation to be done.
I just think in about 2035, you'll still be hearing politicians and mayors saying, we will look into the rape of Britain. We will look... If they wanted something done about it, it would have been done. This is delaying tactics. This is deceitful, ignoring. I mean, I was reading Kristalla's damnation of Sadiq Khan and the Met Police. She claims that they had the report of this London grooming gang, who was, by the way, a very notorious, famous criminal gang, that the police and Sadiq Khan had this for 7 years.
Wow.
And yet still denied there being an issue with grooming gangs in the most disgustingly disrespectful way. And we know some of the saddest stuff she talks about is how, these girls are screaming and shouting and all they get is like a brick wall. And that many times when she was very young and the abuse and rapes were happening, that she was the one protecting the other girls from the rape and exploitation, because the people she trusted to help them was just silent.
Yeah.
And I do think there needs to be a law brought in. I really do. So teachers and social workers at the moment have something called mandated reporter, which is if they fail to report on evidence-based child abuse, say that they see in their classroom or their child care home, it's a crime. And I think we need to bring in, for our politicians, for our mayors, for any elected official, mandated action, where if they see an evidence of child rape gangs and choose to take no action, that is a crime. It's no good that heads roll and resignations happen now. They need to face court. These men and women in positions of power over what they knew, when they knew, why they decided no action should be taken. I mean, this is the rape of Britain. There's no bigger scandal this century than what's happened to hundreds of thousands of little girls. And the fact that Sadiq Khan, who likes to, pigeon himself like a fancy peacock around the globe about how wonderful he is, appears to have turned his back on little broken bodies of children, just so horrendously abused, and he had the information, and the Met Police. There's a film from 12 years. There's a scene from 12 Years a Slave. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's one of the most moving movies. And one of the slaves gets just repeatedly raped and beaten up every day of her life, and she says, "There's just no comfort for me in this world." Tears, and that makes me think so much of the little girls up and down this country, and that was their life, just raped and beaten every day. There was no comfort, nothing for them. There was no one they could go to. It is so scandalous. I do think there needs to be a crime here, recognised, whether it's in the mayoral office, whether it's in the police. This is enough. What's going on in Westminster is disgusting. Those little girls. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Reform press conference where Nigel had Ellie Reynolds up a week or so ago. She was a grooming gang survivor, and she was talking so courageously about what had happened to her to a whole sea full of mainstream media journalists. And when she sat down and was taking questions, vast majority only focused on Sarah Poachin, the Reform MP who'd been accused of racism over DEI comments. And she finally said, she was so brave, she really schooled them. She sat there and said, all you lot there took you decades to even recognise the racial element against white working class girls by their rapists. That in itself is rapist. So, I'm paraphrasing, but before you call other people racist, take a look at yourself, media, for ignoring the racial element against white girls and the religious element up and down the country, which the media essentially have, bar great, papers like yourself and a couple of others. But yeah, I've just found it. You can tell I'm passionate about it because I just don't see there being an end to it unless there is a complete regime change.
Listen, before you go, just give me 30 more seconds of your time, please. I need your help. The Daily Express has launched an urgent Christmas fundraising appeal to support WizKids, an incredible charity that helps thousands of disabled children get access to personalised wheelchairs. Now, the reason we're doing this, it's simple. WizKids have had no choice but to close their waiting list for the first time in 35 years, meaning there are disabled young people out there who can't have the basic freedom and independence of moving around. So, as we are entering the Christmas period, we're asking you, the Daily Expresso audience, to donate to this amazing cause with our Give the Gift of Childhood This Christmas campaign. If you're able to help a young person in need this Christmas, then you can donate using the link in the description of this video. Every little bit helps. No matter how small the donation, please, I'm asking you for your help. Thank you so much. That is the end of today's episode. Thank you for watching Daily Expresso. Thank you, lovely
Pleasure.
Belinda. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.